The wind howled through the trees, and the snow fell thicker than ever before. A woman drove slowly along the winding road, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Behind her, in the back seat, her 3 children huddled together under the thin blanket she had packed, their small faces pale from the cold. She tried to keep them calm, telling them little stories about sunny days and warm houses. But inside, her heart pounded with worry. The storm was growing stronger. The road ahead was disappearing under a blanket of white. She had always been cautious, but this winter had been different. After losing her husband, every day felt heavier than the last. She worked long hours to make ends meet, and coming home to an empty house was one of the hardest parts. The children, young and full of energy, tried to be brave, but they could sense their mother's fear. Her eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, checking on them every few seconds. Their small hands gripped the blanket tightly, trying to stay warm. While she fought to stay calm, the car slipped slightly on the ice, and she tightened her grip on the wheel. Her knuckles turned white. She breathed slowly, reminding herself to stay focused. She had faced hard times before, but this was different. Being alone with 3 children in the middle of a snowstorm made every decision feel monumental. She had packed extra clothes, blankets, and snacks, hoping to be prepared for anything. But the reality of the situation was sinking in. The children began to whimper softly. She turned to them, forcing a smile onto her face. "We're going to be okay," she said, though her voice trembled just a little. She told them stories about the forest they were passing, imagining animals hiding in the snow and talking about how the wind was just nature singing. Her oldest child clutched her arm, and she felt a mix of love and fear. She wished she could be stronger for them, but the cold gnawed at her bones, and the isolation made her heart ache. Hours seemed to pass like minutes, and the storm showed no sign of slowing down. The snow piled against the car, and every turn of the wheel was a fight against the ice. She tried to call for help, but her phone signal was weak, barely enough to make a call, let alone track her location. The road was deserted. She could see nothing beyond the swirling white. No houses, no lights, nothing familiar. Panic began to creep in, but she pushed it down, focusing on the children. They needed her calm. Even if she wasn't sure she felt it herself, she parked the car by the side of the road when the tires started to spin. The snow was deep, and the car wasn't moving anymore. She hugged her children close, sharing what little warmth she had. The youngest leaned into her, shivering, and she whispered, "We'll be okay. Someone will come for us." But the truth was, she didn't know if anyone would. She looked out at the white expanse, hoping for a glimpse of headlights, a sign of life, anything. The silence was thick, broken only by the wind and the occasional creak of the car as it settled in the snow. Night fell, though it felt like darkness had been there for hours already. She wrapped the blanket around her children tighter and pressed her forehead to the window, watching the snow swirl. Her mind wandered to her husband, imagining him comforting them, keeping them safe. She swallowed hard and reminded herself that she had to be strong. The children looked to her for reassurance, and she had to give it. Even if her own heart was full of fear, she tried to make the car as warm as possible. Using her own body heat and huddling the children together, she sang softly to them, little songs from their bedtime routine, anything to keep them calm. Her voice shook, but she kept going, telling stories of warmer days and better times. She talked about the first spring, the flowers, and the sun on their faces. Anything to take their minds off the cold. The wind seemed to grow stronger, rattling the windows and making the car rock slightly. She checked her phone again, hoping for a signal, hoping for someone to call. Nothing. She felt the weight of the world pressing down on her, but she refused to let it show. She knew that if she panicked, the children would too. She hugged them tighter, whispering, "We're going to be fine. We just have to stay together." The oldest child asked questions about what would happen if no one came. She answered as honestly as she could without causing more fear. "We'll be okay. People help each other. Someone will find us," she said. The children nodded, trusting her words, even as the storm raged on. Her heart ached at their bravery. She wanted to cry, but she swallowed the tears. Keeping her focus on keeping them warm and safe, time passed slowly, each minute stretching endlessly. She counted silently, marking the hours as best she could. She remembered the times before, when the children had laughed and played without worry. She longed for those days but knew she had to focus on survival now. The car was their shelter, their only barrier against the storm, and she treated it with respect, making sure nothing went wrong. She thought about her neighbors. Imagining someone noticing the car missing and coming to help, she thought about the kindness of strangers, and a small flicker of hope warmed her heart. She promised herself that, no matter what, she would keep the children safe. She would do whatever it took to make it through the night. Hours later, exhaustion began to set in. The children dozed off, leaning against her, trusting her to keep them safe. She stayed awake, her eyes scanning the snow, watching for any sign of rescue. Every sound, every shadow, made her heart race. She refused to let sleep overcome her completely. She knew the moment she relaxed, danger could strike. Her mind replayed every possible scenario, every plan she could make to survive. The storm showed no signs of stopping. Snow piled higher, and the wind carried an eerie sound that made the car feel even more isolated. She hugged the children, whispered words of comfort, and tried to stay strong. She told herself that they were together, and that mattered more than anything else. She reminded herself that help could come at any moment, and she had to be ready. Through the long, cold night, she kept talking, telling stories, singing, keeping the children close. The bond between them grew stronger in those hours of fear. She knew that even in the worst storm, love and courage could guide them. And as the snow continued to fall, she promised herself that they would see the morning together, that they would survive this night no matter how hard it was. The storm raged on, the wind slicing through the trees like sharp blades. Snow covered everything outside, transforming the world into a white, frozen wilderness. The woman stayed close to her children in the car, feeling their warmth against her body, but the cold had begun to seep into her bones. She wrapped herself tighter in the blankets and adjusted her coat, trying to shield the children from the chill. Every few minutes, she looked at their small faces, their eyes blinking sleepily or wide with fear. She whispered words of comfort, reminding them that they were together and that, together, they could survive anything. The car shivered as the icy wind pressed against it. She could see her breath in the air, each exhale turning into a small cloud before disappearing. The headlights had long since stopped reaching past the thick curtain of falling snow. She tried again to use her phone, hoping a miracle signal would appear, but the screen only showed the weak blinking bars. Frustration and fear pressed on her chest like a heavy weight. She clenched her jaw and reminded herself that panicking would not help. She needed to think, to plan, to survive. Her youngest child stirred, whimpering softly. She leaned over, smoothing hair from the child's forehead, and murmured, "It's okay, sweetie. We're safe. We'll stay warm together." She spoke calmly, even though her heart raced. She knew that the children were looking to her for strength, and she had to be their rock. She began humming softly, an old tune she remembered from her own childhood. The sound filled the car, a small warmth in the cold night. The children clutched at her, closing their eyes, comforted by the familiar sound. Hours passed, though she had lost track of time. The storm was relentless, the snow piling higher around the car. She considered leaving to look for help, but the thought of trudging through the deep snow with 3 children, already cold and tired, terrified her. She knew that the storm could easily hide the path, and one wrong step could be dangerous. She decided it was safer to stay in the car, to conserve energy and warmth. She moved quietly, making sure everyone had enough blankets, making small adjustments to their positions to keep them as comfortable as possible. Her mind wandered to memories of her husband, who had always been so steady and calm in difficult times. She could almost hear his voice telling her that they would get through this, that she was stronger than she believed. She swallowed hard, pushing back tears. She had to focus on the here and now and keeping her children alive and safe. She spoke softly, telling them stories about the world beyond the storm, about places where the sun shone warmly and laughter filled the air. She painted pictures with words, trying to make the darkness less frightening. The night seemed endless. The children slept intermittently, their small bodies curled against hers. She stayed awake, listening to the wind, watching for any sign of movement outside. Any shadow, any sound that might mean help was near. She noticed how the car tires had begun to sink slightly into the snow, a subtle reminder that time was not on their side. She whispered to the children, keeping them calm, telling them that help could come at any moment, and that they needed to stay strong. She began to think about survival. She checked the supplies she had, a few bottles of water, some snacks, extra blankets, and a flashlight. She rationed carefully, knowing they might need it for hours more. She shared water and small bites of food with the children, making it feel like a game to distract them from the cold. They giggled quietly, small sounds that made her heart swell with love and pride. Even in fear, even in hardship, they could still smile. And that was a small victory she clung to. The wind continued to howl outside, rattling the car and shaking loose snow from the branches above. She held the children close, singing softly, telling stories about heroes and adventures, anything to keep their minds off the storm. She imagined that they were brave adventurers, surviving the cold and making it through a magical winter forest. She wanted to turn the fear into something they could manage, to give them courage. To give herself courage. Hours stretched into what felt like days. Her body ached from holding the children, from sitting in one position for so long. Her hands were numb and her feet felt frozen, but she refused to show weakness. She whispered words of encouragement, telling them that they were strong, that they could endure this night. She reminded herself that they were together, and that was everything. As long as they had each other, they had hope. A shadow of worry crossed her mind. What if no one came? What if the snowstorm swallowed the roads and their car remained unseen? She pushed the thought away, focusing on breathing, on keeping the children calm. She held them tighter, feeling their small hearts beating against hers. Each beat was a reminder that they were alive, and that was a reason to keep going. She told them stories about warm kitchens, hot cocoa, and sunlight. Painting a future that felt distant but reachable, the eldest child stirred, asking questions softly about when someone would find them. She answered with patience and honesty, without giving in to panic. "Someone will find us," she said. "People are kind. There are people who help when they see someone in need." The child nodded slowly, eyes wide with trust. She held the child's hand, squeezing gently, feeling a connection stronger than the storm outside. She told stories about brave families who survived storms, about neighbors who came together, about strangers who became heroes. She imagined them as those heroes, guiding her family safely through the snow. The night grew colder, and the snow seemed to pile higher. The car became a small island in a frozen ocean. She focused on keeping the children warm, moving blankets and jackets, wrapping them carefully. She talked softly, creating a world inside the car where fear could not reach them. She sang songs, told stories, and whispered words of hope, doing everything she could to make the night less harsh. Each small laugh, each quiet sigh of comfort from the children, became a lifeline she clung to. Exhaustion pressed heavily on her, but she refused to sleep fully. She had to be alert. She kept her eyes on the windows, listening for any sound that might signal help. She thought about the roads, the neighbors, anyone who might notice they were missing. She hoped for a kind soul to check the area, someone who could bring them to safety. The children, trusting her guidance, leaned into her, resting when they could, relying entirely on her strength. Hours passed with slow, heavy moments. She counted silently, marking the time, giving herself small goals. She told the children little stories with beginnings and endings, creating a rhythm that kept their minds engaged. She reminded them that storms pass, that mornings come, and that they would survive. She encouraged them to imagine the sun, the warmth, the safety of a home with a fire burning. Each story was a thread of hope, weaving them through the long, cold night. The storm outside showed no sign of letting up. The snowflakes hit the windows with a rhythmic, relentless sound. She hugged the children closer, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. She whispered words of love and encouragement, feeling the strength of her own heart grow as she kept them safe. Each hour survived was a victory, each smile a triumph. She refused to let the darkness defeat them. As the night wore on, she began to think about the morning. She imagined the sun breaking through the clouds, the snow glinting like diamonds, the roads becoming clear again. She told the children about the adventures they would have once the storm passed, about the safety of neighbors and friends, about the warmth of home. She created a world where hope was tangible, a world they could survive in until rescue arrived. And through it all, she held them close, whispered stories, and made a promise in her heart that they would see the morning together. The storm showed no sign of slowing. The snow fell in thick sheets, blurring the world outside the car into a white blur. The wind howled against the windows, making the vehicle shudder slightly with every gust. Inside, the woman stayed close to her children, her body a shield against the freezing air that crept in. She wrapped them in blankets, rearranged jackets and scarves, and whispered stories to keep them distracted from the cold. The children clung to her, trusting her to protect them, and in their eyes, she found the strength to keep going. Time had lost all meaning. Minutes and hours merged into one long, endless night. She glanced at her phone once more, hoping for a signal, but the screen remained stubbornly blank. Her heart sank, but she refused to give in to panic. She reminded herself that people were out there, that help could come, that someone would notice they were missing. She spoke softly to the children, telling them about people who cared, about strangers who became heroes, and about neighbors who looked out for each other. Her voice trembled sometimes, but she kept the words flowing, a lifeline against fear. The youngest child stirred, whimpering softly. She held the child close, rubbing their back and whispering comforting words. She imagined the warmth of a fire, the smell of food, the softness of beds waiting somewhere beyond the storm. She tried to make those images real for her children, painting them with words so their minds could escape the cold and fear, even for a few moments. The children's eyes grew heavy, and soon they drifted off to a restless sleep. Trusting her to keep them safe, she stayed awake, listening to the wind, feeling the cold through her coat and blankets. Every creak of the car, every whistle of the wind, set her heart racing. She pressed her forehead to the window, trying to peer through the white haze, hoping for a glimpse of headlights, moving figure, anything that would mean rescue. Hours felt like years, and yet she kept talking softly, telling stories about brave travelers, about kindness in the world, about how storms always end and the sun always comes back. Her mind wandered to her neighbors and friends. She hoped that someone had noticed their absence and was searching. She imagined someone calling for help, someone seeing the car trapped in the snow and coming to save them. That thought gave her a spark of hope, a reminder that she was not entirely alone. She shared this hope with the children, telling them that people help each other, that kindness exists even in the coldest places, that they were not forgotten. The storm continued to batter the car, but she focused on what she could control. She checked the blankets, made sure the children were huddled together, and rationed the small supplies she had. She gave the children small sips of water and bites of food, turning it into a game to distract them from the cold. They smiled faintly, and she clung to those moments, feeling pride and love and a determination to keep them alive no matter what. Suddenly, a sound cut through the storm, faint but unmistakable. A distant rumble, like the approach of something on the road. She froze, her heart pounding. Could it be a car? Could it be someone coming to help? She held her breath, listening intently. The children stirred, sensing her tension, and she quickly whispered that everything would be okay, that they might be found soon. Her mind raced, imagining possibilities, preparing for rescue, preparing for relief. The sound grew closer, and her heart leaped. Headlights began to appear through the thick snow, faint at first, then brighter as they approached. She could hardly believe her eyes. Figures emerged, moving through the snow with purpose. She squinted, trying to make out who they were. To her relief, they were not strangers in a car, but a group of people on motorcycles. Their machines equipped to handle the storm. The bikers called out to her, their voices carrying over the wind. They had heard about the stranded family and were determined to reach them. The woman's hands shook as she opened the car door. Cold air rushed in, biting, but hope surged stronger. The bikers approached, offering blankets, hot drinks, and reassuring words. They moved with experience and calm, checking on the children, lifting them carefully from the car, and ensuring they were warm. The woman's eyes filled with tears, relief washing over her like a wave. She had not imagined rescue would come in the middle of such a relentless storm, but here they were, brave strangers risking their own safety to help her family. The children clung to the bikers, amazed at the sudden warmth and attention. They were curious about the motorcycles, about the riders' coats and helmets, but the fear in their eyes slowly faded. The woman thanked the bikers over and over, words tumbling out in a rush. She could hardly believe their kindness, their courage, and their dedication. She realized that hope had been alive all along, waiting for the right moment to shine through the storm. The bikers worked together to make a path back to the main road. They guided the woman and her children carefully, helping them navigate the snow and ice. Every step was slow and deliberate, but the warmth of human connection and the determination to survive made the journey bearable. She held her children close, walking alongside them, feeling the bond of safety and protection provided by these strangers who had become heroes. As they moved through the snow, she began to talk to the bikers, sharing small details about her life, about how she had managed after her husband's passing, about her children's bravery. The bikers listened with patience and understanding, offering comfort and support. She felt a sense of gratitude deeper than words, realizing that in the darkest moments, strangers could become the most important people in your life. Finally, they reached a safer area, where the snow was lighter, the road clearer. The woman's heart soared. She had feared the worst, but now, with her children safe and warm, she could breathe again. She turned to the bikers, thanking them one last time. The children waved, shy but happy, and she knew that this night, which had begun in fear and uncertainty, had transformed into a story of hope and human kindness. As they prepared to leave, the bikers reminded her that she was not alone, that the community cared, that there would always be people willing to help in times of need. The woman hugged them, tears streaming down her face, feeling a profound sense of connection. She realized that in the midst of a storm, in the cold and isolation, the warmth of human kindness could shine brighter than the sun. The night was still cold, but she felt a warmth inside her that the storm could not touch. The bikers rode off, leaving the family safe and guided toward home. She held her children close, whispering stories of courage and bravery, stories that would stay with them forever. The snowstorm had tested them, but together, with the help of strangers, they had survived. And in that survival, they found a renewed sense of hope, a deeper understanding of the goodness that exists even in the most challenging times. The wind was still fierce, blowing the snow into drifts that rose like small hills around the car. The woman held her children tightly, feeling the warmth of their small bodies against hers. The bikers had arrived, and their presence brought a sense of safety that was almost overwhelming. They spoke softly, giving instructions and reassurance, guiding the woman and her children step by step. Every movement was careful, deliberate, because the snow was deep and the cold sharp. She held on to hope, gripping her children's hands as they followed the bikers into the storm. The motorcycles were equipped with special tires, designed to grip even the snowiest paths. The bikers moved with experience, scanning the landscape and finding the safest route. The woman followed closely, her children wrapped in blankets, their small bodies shivering but safe. She kept talking to them, whispering stories and reminders that they were brave and strong. Every word, every movement was meant to keep fear at bay, to replace panic with courage. The snow was relentless, sticking to boots, coats, and the edges of the blankets. Yet, the group moved steadily. The woman noticed how the bikers worked as a team, each one looking out for the other, each one ready to lend a hand. She realized that even in the harshest conditions, people could come together and protect those in need. She felt a swell of gratitude, mixed with awe at the courage of these strangers who had risked the storm to save her family. As they moved forward, the youngest child began to cry softly, overwhelmed by the cold and fear. She bent down, holding the child close, murmuring words of comfort. The bikers paused, handing her a warm drink from a thermos, and she took small sips, feeling the warmth spread through her body. The children's faces relaxed, their trust in her and the bikers evident. She realized that even in moments of terror, small acts of kindness could make all the difference. Hours passed as they navigated the frozen terrain. The snow continued to fall, but the bikers' determination never wavered. They communicated quietly, guiding the woman and her children through drifts and over icy patches. The woman focused on the path, on her children, and on the warmth she could give them. She shared stories, sang songs, and kept their spirits lifted. She wanted them to remember this night not only for the fear, but also for the courage, kindness they had witnessed, eventually. They reached a clearing where the snow was lighter and the road was more visible. The bikers led the family carefully, ensuring no one stumbled or fell. The woman's heart raced with relief. She could feel the tension in her shoulders ease, even as the storm continued around them. She looked at the bikers, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude for their bravery, for their skill, and for the humanity they had shown. The children began to ask questions, their curiosity replacing some of their fear. They wanted to know about the motorcycles, about the bikers' coats, and about how they could brave the storm. The woman smiled, answering patiently, turning their curiosity into small lessons about bravery, teamwork, and kindness. She wanted them to understand that heroism is not always about grand gestures, but often about showing up when someone needed help most. As they continued, the woman noticed how the bikers adjusted their pace to match theirs, slowing down when the snow was deep, quickening when the path was clear. They kept a careful eye on the children, offering support when needed. The woman felt a sense of connection with these strangers, shared understanding of the importance of protecting life, of standing together in adversity. She realized that even in the harshest conditions, human kindness could shine brighter than fear. The snowstorm began to lessen slightly, the wind losing some of its bite. The road ahead became clearer, and the woman could see faint lights in the distance. Relief flooded her, and she hugged her children tightly, feeling the warmth of survival. The bikers smiled, encouraged by the progress, and continued to guide them carefully. Each step forward was a victory, a movement from fear toward safety. Finally, they reached a point where vehicles could travel more easily. The bikers made sure the woman and her children were safe, handing them extra blankets and warm drinks. She thanked them over and over, tears streaming down her face. The children hugged the bikers, shy but grateful, their fear replaced with a sense of wonder and relief. The woman realized that this night, which had begun in terror and isolation, had become a story of courage, hope, and human kindness. She spoke to the bikers, sharing her gratitude and recounting the long hours in the car, the fear and cold, and the trust she had placed in them. They listened with patience, nodding and offering quiet words of reassurance. The woman felt a deep sense of connection, understanding that these strangers had become her family in that moment. Their bravery had carried her and her children through the worst of the storm. The bikers reminded her to take care, to keep the children warm, and to reach shelter as soon as possible. She nodded, grateful for their advice and guidance. She knew that the journey was not yet fully over. But with the storm easing and the road ahead clearer, she felt hope and confidence returning. She held her children close, whispering stories of bravery, kindness, and survival, reinforcing the lessons they had learned that night as they walked the last stretch toward safety. The woman reflected on the night's events. She realized that courage was not just about facing danger, but about protecting those you love, about trusting strangers when circumstances demand it, and about keeping hope alive even in the darkest moments. She shared these thoughts with her children, turning the experience into a story of resilience and humanity. Finally, they reached a place where they could rest, a small building with warmth and light. The woman felt the cold melt from her body, replaced by a profound sense of relief. The children, exhausted but safe, smiled weakly, feeling the comfort of being out of the storm. She hugged them tightly, whispering words of love and reassurance, knowing that they had survived together. The bikers, having guided them to this point, nodded and prepared to leave. Their mission complete, she thanked them one last time, feeling a deep gratitude that words could scarcely express. The children waved, shy but happy, and she realized that the night's terror had been transformed into a story of human kindness and bravery. The bikers rode away, leaving the family in safety, and the woman felt a warmth in her heart that the storm could not touch. She knew that the lessons of this night would stay with them forever, a reminder that even in the harshest conditions, hope, courage, and kindness could carry you through. The first light of morning crept over the horizon, turning the snow into a soft, sparkling blanket. The storm had passed, leaving a quiet stillness over the land. The woman and her children had finally reached a safe place, and the warmth inside the small building felt like a miracle after the long, cold night. She wrapped the children in extra blankets and held them close, feeling the weight of the past hours finally lifting. Their small bodies pressed against hers, and she whispered words of love and relief. They were alive, they were safe, and the world outside seemed kinder now. Word of their rescue spread quickly through the town. Neighbors and community members heard about how the bikers had found the family and guided them through the storm. People came to check on them, bringing food, warm drinks, and extra blankets. The woman was overwhelmed by the outpouring of care. She had feared isolation, feared that they might be forgotten in the vast white world. But now she realized that kindness could arrive in the most unexpected ways. People cared, and that knowledge filled her heart with hope. The children were still sleepy, their eyes wide with awe at the kindness surrounding them. They asked questions about the bikers, about how they had found them, and about the motorcycles that had carried them through the snow. The woman answered as best as she could, turning every detail into a lesson about courage, teamwork, and the importance of helping others. She wanted the children to remember not just the fear but the bravery and kindness they had witnessed, the proof that even in hard times, goodness existed. Community members arrived to check on the car left in the snow, making sure it was safe and helping to clear it from the road. The woman watched, grateful for the generosity and care shown by people who had never met her before. She thought about the bikers, about the strangers who had risked their safety, and she realized how rare and powerful such acts of kindness were. She promised herself that she would carry that lesson forward, teaching her children to help others whenever they could. As the day progressed, she reflected on the night's events. She thought about how fear had gripped them, how the snow had seemed endless, and how despair had crept into her heart. Yet, through all of it, she had held on to hope, and hope had not failed her. The bikers had been the bridge between fear and safety, and the community had reinforced the lesson that people could care deeply, even for strangers. She shared these reflections with the children, telling them how bravery sometimes meant trusting others, that kindness could shine even in the darkest moments. Meals arrived, warm and comforting. The children ate slowly, their hunger from the long night reminding them of how much they had endured. She watched them, grateful that their small bodies were safe and cared for. She explained to them the importance of being grateful for help, for human connection, and for the lessons they had learned during the night. The children nodded, taking in the stories, the lessons, and the warmth surrounding them. Neighbors stopped by throughout the day, bringing supplies and sharing stories of their own experiences with snowstorms and emergencies. The woman listened, learning and connecting, realizing that her family was not alone. She could rely on her community, and she could also contribute in the future. She spoke to the children about the importance of giving back, about helping others who might face challenges, and about being brave and kind even when life was hard. The children absorbed these lessons, their young minds forming a sense of responsibility and empathy. In the afternoon, the woman walked outside with the children, watching the snow glisten in the sunlight. The cold was still present, but it no longer felt threatening. She pointed out footprints, patterns in the snow, and the beauty of the world that had seemed so hostile the night before. She told the children about the bikers again, about their bravery and their determination, and about how humans could make a difference when they chose to act with kindness. The children listened, fascinated and inspired, understanding that heroism could be everyday acts as well as extraordinary ones. The woman thought about her late husband and the life they had shared before the storm. She realized that while she had feared being alone, the world had shown her that support could come in unexpected ways. The bikers, the neighbors, and even strangers who had reached out had all contributed to a sense of safety and hope. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that she could face challenges with courage and that her children could learn from her example. As evening approached, the woman and her children settled in to rest once more. The storm was gone, replaced by a calm winter night, clear and cold but safe. She hugged the children, telling them stories of bravery and kindness, of how strangers had come to help them and how they had survived together. The children listened, comforted and inspired, feeling the love and protection of their mother and the community around them. The woman reflected on the importance of remembering moments like these, of recognizing the bravery of others and carrying those lessons forward. She spoke to her children about how they could help others, how even small acts of kindness could make a big difference, and how courage and hope could guide them through any challenge. The children nodded, their eyes bright with understanding and determination. Finally, the woman looked out at the snow-covered landscape, feeling a sense of peace she had not felt in a long time. The storm had tested them, but it had also revealed the power of human kindness, courage, and community. She held her children close, whispering that they had survived and that they would face the future with hope and strength. She knew that the night's experience would stay with them forever, shaping their understanding of the world, of bravery, and of the importance of helping and caring for others. The woman smiled, her heart full, as she watched her children fall asleep in warmth and safety. She knew that life would continue to have challenges, but she also knew that together, with courage, love, and hope, they could face anything. The night of fear and uncertainty had ended, replaced by a story of survival, human kindness, and community support. And in that story, she found strength, gratitude, and an enduring sense of hope that would carry her and her children through all the days to come.